What is beauty? Is it engaging eyes? Is it a long, slender body? Is it stylish hair? These are the types of images that we are inundated each and every day in magazines, on television, and on billboards. Now look again. The same model, the same person, but how often do you see someone like me in a magazine? Did I change? Am I still considered beautiful? It's not often that we associate beauty and sensuality with a wheelchair. So how do we decide who is beautiful? Well, I decided to research that topic for today, and shockingly, I came across a beauty equation. So this equation will measure your level of beauty and decide why some of us are considered beautiful and some of us are not. It's been long known that symmetry is equated with beauty, and thousands of years ago, they used what was called the golden ratio to measure, artists and architects would use it to measure out their masterpieces. So now, today, scientists have adopted this formula to determine why some people are considered beautiful and why others are not. A Dr. Kendra Schmidt of University of Nebraska Medical Center takes the golden ratio along with 29 other facial measurements and comes up with a score, a beauty score between 1 to 10. 10 is the most beautiful, and most people score between a 4 to 6. So how does that make you feel? No one is a perfect 10, although I did read that apparently Brad Pitt comes quite close to a 10. I don't think most of us women are going to argue that point. So how does this make us feel? Basically, symmetry is a necessity and uniqueness is a negative. Why are we so heavily invested in this unattainable, unrealistic standard? Well, I lived in this unrealistic world 30 years ago, yes, 30 years ago, when I was a model in Toronto, Canada. And everything had to be perfect. It took hours and hours and basically a village to create one photo. We had makeup artists, we had stylists, we had hairdressers, we had pre-production, post-production, proper lighting, and it would take all day to create one of these perfect photos. Like I said, this was the 80s. It wasn't really the best decade for hair and fashion. And these were not selfies, by the way, back then. So, why did I even want to? Well, and the thing is, people think that models must be really confident about their looks. For me, that was far from the case, and I have a feeling for a lot of models. You're being judged constantly. And I would go to these job interviews and I would look around and there's all these beautiful women sitting there and I would think, what am I doing here? And then I'd think, I wish I was tall like her. I wish I had her big lips. You know, I wish I had her perfect body. And we all do it. We compare ourselves in this negative way. And it doesn't matter if it's our looks, it's either our jobs or it's our homes or it's our belongings. And I often find we're just not satisfied with what we have. The reason I started modeling, you're probably wondering, well, one, I wanted to make some money. And two, I wanted to see the world. And 6 months into modeling, I got my first international assignment, a 2-month contract in Tokyo. And I'll never forget, I was so excited. And I was packing, and I had this big suitcase full of stuff, and it was such a crappy suitcase, but it was so full that I had to tie a rope around it to keep it from bursting open. And my flight was July 5th, 1984, early in the morning. So my friend came and picked me up late that night, and we wanted to get to the airport early, so we left. And we get on the highway, and it was extremely foggy. And as soon as we got on the highway, we thought we better get off at the first exit. So as we're exiting off the ramp, instinctively I looked behind us to make sure we got off okay. And right then I saw two headlights bearing down on us, and I heard a horrific crash. It was the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. And apparently the driver that hit us from behind had been drinking, and he thought he was still on the highway, so he was going, he said, at least 60 miles an hour. Our car spun out across, don't make fun of my Canadian accent there, spun out across 3 lanes of traffic, and we stopped to rest in the fast lane. When the car came to a stop, I had my chest strap on and was slumped forward, but I couldn't lift up my head. And I was looking down at my body, and I could see my legs, my arms, parts of my hands. I could see it, but I couldn't feel them, nor could I move them. And I knew at that point I had broke my neck. I was a lifeguard and a swimming instructor, so we learned a lot about spinal cord injuries. I could smell gas leaking, and I told my friend to get out of the car. And this was the most terrifying moment of my life, because as I was slumped forward, I could hear the car screeching around me, trying not to hit me for the second time. And I was trapped there for quite some time, and finally I was extracted from the vehicle and taken to a hospital where I found out I had broken my neck, and I didn't just break my neck, shattered my neck. Ironically, from the suitcase I had packed had flown over the back seat and hit me in the back of the neck. So I underwent 10 hours of surgery, and the doctor took a piece of bone from my hip and fused it into my neck. I got a tracheotomy because I couldn't breathe, and a halo. And not the kind of halo because I was an angel, because trust me, at that time of my life I was far from an angel. It was the 80s, and I was modeling. But that's another story in itself. So they had to take the halo, and they take 4 screws, and they screw it into your skull. It's a metal halo. It attaches to metal bars to a vest, and that immobilizes your neck and keeps your head from moving. So I was in ICU for 2 months, and then I was transferred to a rehabilitation hospital, and they took out the tracheotomy, and after 3 months was the big day that I got the halo taken off, and I was so excited because finally I was going to get this thing taken off and not look like Frankenstein anymore, which was really horrible, and it was painful. But the biggest thing was I was going to get a shower for the first time in 3 months. And that was quite the contrast from my perfect world before. So I'll never forget the nurse wheeling me into the shower. And it was the first time I could see my body because I could actually look down. My head had been, forced upwards. And I wasn't mentally prepared. And I looked down, and my legs were so skinny and atrophied, and my arms, my stomach had been atrophied and kind of stretched out, and I just had a complete meltdown. I lost it at that point, and I remember being in my room and just staring at the ceiling or staring out the window, and not at that point wanting to even look at a magazine or look at television, because the comparison of the life I was living to everyone else's was too painful for me. I grew into womanhood as a quadriplegic. There was very little information out there regarding women's issues. I remember I asked my doctor about birth control, and he said to me, why don't you just consider getting a hysterectomy? I was mortified to think I'd had to make a decision like that at that age. I don't remember any role models, and when I did see any brochures or anything, I did see women were often portrayed as victims, disabled women were portrayed as victims, and the images I would see were like these sad images, and this was never how I envisioned my life to be. I was in the hospital for a year, and after that, I decided if I could just get back to my life before, if I could just work, and everything would be okay, just get back to work. So I talked to my modeling manager, and I didn't know if they'd be receptive to shooting me in the wheelchair, but I thought, well, maybe they'd be receptive to at least doing face stuff again. I could do some beauty shots and make some money, and I definitely needed money at that point. So my manager was supportive, and I felt like the fashion industry was compassionate, but I also felt like they didn't know what to do with me. And so, they were willing to cover my tragic story, but they weren't willing to hire me and give me a job. I guess at that point, my beauty score was much below the 4 to 6, and I felt pretty invisible. Fortunately, and I just wanted to say, not that I'm trying to prove a point or anything, but I'm just saying, but these photos here were all taken after my accident, so anyway. Unfortunately, I did get a rewarding job. I got to speak at schools and things on the perils of drinking and driving. And I think, from the outside, it appeared like, I had it together, I was doing okay. But on the inside, I was struggling. I was, once again, comparing, but this time I kept thinking of my previous life, and I missed my active, athletic life, and I just wanted it back, so I kept comparing. And I was kind of living my life on the sidelines, like I felt like I was more of a spectator than a participant. And I think subconsciously I was thinking, well, maybe, once I'm better, then I'll start living again. But I wasn't getting better. And, people suggested to me, well, why don't you, join a group with people with disabilities? And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I felt badly for those people. This is my quotation marks, by the way, now. They're a little modified, but those people. But I didn't think I was one of them, nor did I want other people to think I was one of them. So, I just kept going and living on like this. And then finally, a friend of mine called me and she said, we're looking for people with your level of injury to participate in a research study for spinal cord injuries at the Miami Project to Cure Paralysis. Well, I was living in Toronto, and it was winter, so I jumped at the opportunity to go down to Miami, and it was there that I started to be around people with disabilities more, especially the women, and the longer I spent with them, the more I started to learn from them. And I was becoming inspired, and I started to realize the importance of that community support and that peer support, and so much that I finally, with the help of some other women with disabilities, we created a website called mobilewomen.org, and that provided, I felt alone before, and I didn't feel alone anymore. And I was thinking of all the other women out there that were isolated as well. So this provides like a place for people to share information and to support one another and to have that information about parenting and pregnancy and sexuality and all those things that I had a hard time finding. Now I found myself comparing myself again to these women, but this time it was different. I was comparing myself in a positive way. I was learning from them. I was being inspired by them, and trust me, I was being challenged by them, and it was very empowering. And these women weren't just surviving, these women are thriving. They were entrepreneurs, they were athletes, they were professionals, they were mothers, and for me it was life-changing, it was life-saving. I In 2006, some of these women contacted me and they said, hey, would you be interested in being this photography exhibit with women with disabilities? And it was called the Raw Beauty Project. And so I agreed to do it. And the mission is to transform stereotypes, change perceptions, and overcome personal obstacles by awareness of women with physical disabilities, or actually all disabilities. So we had 20 women, and they were paired with a photographer, and we were all told to create a photo based on 3 words: beauty, sensuality, and empowerment. Well, the results were stunning. And I just wanted to show you some of these photos. This is Shelley, and Shelley was one of the original founders of the project. And Shelley wouldn't even look in a full-length mirror until she was in her 30s. And now you see her, and she's so beautiful and so confident. This is Susan, one of my dear friends, who's also one of the original members. And she is a pharmacist. She's a podiatrist. She works as a pharmacist now and a teacher. Next is Sabrina, who has a very similar injury to myself. And she also is one of the original members, and she has created a foundation to fund stem cell research. And lastly, this is Joy, and she dances in her wheelchair, and I think her name's so perfect because you can just see the joy in her face. We were so excited about the project and so enthusiastic about it that, actually I wanted to talk about the media first. The media was overwhelmingly positive, and the Miami Herald said, this photo exhibit shows a sexy, powerful, seldom seen view of women with disabilities. And I was so happy to read that, finally to see something positive like that. We were so excited about it that now we're doing another exhibit, and it's called Raw Beauty NYC, and we're doing it in New York City. And we have high-profile photographers with it, and models, and it's to benefit the Christopher and Dana Reed Foundation. Excuse me. According to the Census Bureau, nearly 1 in 5 people in the U.S. have some sort of disability. So I'm still really astonished, although it's better than 30 years ago, I'm still astonished at the lack of fair representation of people with disabilities in the media, especially women. And I think that it's an indication of something much larger, that we deserve to be recognized as part of the community. We're consumers and we're contributors. When I see this photo of myself now, I no longer see a quadriplegic. I see a person who's stronger, more confident, and therefore more beautiful than any of the modeling pictures that I had before. I think united with these women, we will change perceptions. And if we continue to make sure our voices are heard, that someday we will be fully integrated into every aspect of society. And just on a side note, most of my friends are in wheelchairs now. And I'm so proud to be one of them. So far with my journey thus far, for me, I've found the key to success is being self-defined. The outside world constantly tries to define us. You know, what is pretty, what's not pretty, what should we own, what should we do? And being defined externally imposes limits and boundaries on our growth, our strengths, and even our happiness. If we're able to connect with our strengths and connect with who we really are, can you imagine the goals we could achieve, the freedoms we could enjoy, and the happiness we could have? I propose that we create our own beauty equation, one where uniqueness is a positive, and if we do decide to compare ourselves to others, we do it in a positive way, an empowering way, and be motivated. And I'd also like to say for beauty, that we define beauty in terms of confidence, in strength, in intuition, and enthusiasm for life. Thank you very much.